strongest person in the room is not the loudest. It is the one who does not react. They observe, they notice, and they choose when to engage. This is where the power of the manipulator begins to fade, because their strength depends on your reactions. Deception rarely arrives with horns and warnings. More often, it wears charm, a smile, a compliment, an offer of understanding. That is the bait, and most people accept it without realizing. A manipulator does not strike in the first move. They study, they test, they learn your triggers. Every over-explained thought, every emotional outburst, every attempt to win approval becomes information in their hands. This is not love, it is leverage, and the more you react emotionally, the deeper their hold becomes. So how do you protect yourself? Not through revenge, not through shouting, but through clarity, through silence, through emotional discipline. When you no longer give predictable reactions, their strategy collapses. When you stop fueling their control, you begin reclaiming your own. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." That truth is not only philosophy, it is freedom. The calm mind becomes unshakable. The composed soul becomes untouchable. And when you choose silence over chaos, discipline over impulse, you are no longer their puppet. You are free. When you stop reacting, they feel it. Take the common empath's trap. Samantha was the peacekeeper, always forgiving, always explaining. Then she met Leo, a quiet manipulator, charming, sensitive, but deeply insecure. At first, he praised her compassion, her ability to understand and heal. But slowly that admiration shifted. "You're overreacting. You're too emotional. Why can't you just move on?" Samantha began apologizing for things she hadn't done. She doubted herself. She lost sleep trying to decode his moods. Until one day, she simply stopped. She didn't fight. She didn't yell. She just chose silence. And that was the moment his power over her began to crumble. This is the strength of inner discipline. Manipulators don't just want your time, they want your mind. They want access to your emotions, to live rent-free in your head, to trigger doubt without saying a word. But your greatest defense is not loud boundaries. It is the quiet decision that your peace is not negotiable. This is what Epictetus called the inner citadel, a mind so steady, so self-aware, that no one can force their way in. This isn't about calling people evil. It's about recognizing patterns that steal your power and choosing clarity over chaos. You don't need to prove yourself. You don't need to win the argument. You simply need to stop playing the game. Manipulators thrive on conflict. They twist words, distort facts, and turn the tables until you are the one apologizing. But there is one thing they cannot control: your calm. Not silence from fear, but silence from strength. The kind that lets the storm pass without you inside it. Why does it work? Because your reaction is their fuel. They don't need to harm you directly. They only need you to self-destruct in response. The moment you withhold that reaction, their strategy collapses. Silence unsettles them. Composure denies them leverage, and the person who is unreadable cannot be controlled. The Stoics understood this well. Seneca wrote, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." In today's terms, delay is the space you create between feeling and responding. It is not suppression, it is regulation. You feel everything, but you wait until clarity guides the response. In that stillness, you build strength, because the moment you choose calm over chaos, your energy becomes sacred. And what is sacred cannot be manipulated. Psychological boundaries are invisible armor. Physical boundaries can be seen. Emotional and psychological ones cannot. but they are often stronger. They sound like this: I don't engage with chaos. I don't explain myself to confusion. I don't negotiate my worth. And these are not slogans to announce. They are standards to live by, a way of carrying yourself where peace is not something you chase, it is your baseline. Every baited conversation becomes a chance to observe, not absorb. You stop entering battles where the cost is your own self-respect. This is the Stoic code. Consider a real example. David, a manager, was constantly undermined by a colleague. At first he explained, defended, clarified, even appealed to HR. Nothing changed because every reaction became new material for manipulation. One day he did the unexpected. He stopped explaining. He stopped defending. He let his work speak and let his boundaries remain silent, but firm. The result? The manipulator lost control. They overplayed their hand, revealed themselves, and the game collapsed without David needing to fight. That is the strength of quiet discipline. Let's be honest, remaining calm when you are provoked is not easy. But that difficulty is exactly why it is powerful. It takes discipline to pause when anger rises, clarity to choose growth over ego, strength to walk away when pride wants you to stay. This is the heart of spiritual discipline. It is not about reciting philosophy or proving yourself wise. It is the simple, steady act of protecting your peace without announcement. You don't need applause. You need alignment. Alignment with your values, with your dignity, with your inner stillness. Here is the truth. Manipulators do not fear your words. They fear your indifference, because when you no longer react, they no longer matter. They lose relevance. They lose power. And in that quiet, their game unravels. So silence is not punishment. It is wisdom. It is the refusal to let chaos set the terms of your life. When you live this way, you become unreachable, not through hardness, but through clarity. And clarity is what manipulators cannot touch. The difficult truth is this: those who thrive on manipulation do not play fair. They are not seeking resolution or understanding, but dominance. If you keep bringing honesty and empathy into a battlefield built on distortion and confusion, you lose by default. Not because you are weak, but because you are using the wrong playbook. The Stoic chooses a different way: to master themselves instead of trying to master others, to hold the line within, to walk forward in stillness, untouched by noise. Emotional intelligence is not naivete. It isn't about being agreeable, soft, or endlessly forgiving. It's about being deliberate with your emotions. The truth is, manipulators study your patterns. They notice what makes you flinch. They notice when you start to explain yourself. They see how long it takes before you begin to doubt. And then they build their control around those patterns. So the first step in breaking free is not confrontation. It's breaking your own predictability. They will use fairness against you. When you apologize, they read it as weakness. When you stay, they take it as permission. When you explain, they twist it into confession. In their world, kindness becomes leverage, and honesty becomes a weapon. This is why the Stoic doesn't fight chaos with noise. He meets it with discipline, with spiritual composure. Epictetus taught, "A man is not hurt by what happens, but by his opinion of what happens." Manipulators rely on you reacting not to reality, but to your own spinning thoughts. Did I do something wrong? Am I remembering this right? Was it my fault? Once you step back, once you detach, their strategy begins to collapse. Because the Stoic doesn't need them to understand. He only needs to understand himself. But beware of the opposite trap. swinging to coldness. Fine, I'll never care again. That isn't strength. That's pain wearing armor. True strength is not about closing your heart. It is about choosing carefully where you open it and who earns the right to enter. That is what a boundary really is. Not a wall that says stay out, but a gate that says only those who respect this space may come in. Manipulators cannot stand this because they thrive in chaos, not order, in open wounds, not conscious choice. So break the pattern. Starve their game. And here is the quiet move that changes everything. Stop needing to be understood. As long as you chase closure from someone committed to confusion, they hold the board. The moment you let go of that need, you are free. That is how the Stoic fights, not with louder words, but with sharper clarity. You don't win by playing their game. You transcend it by stepping off the board entirely. You leave them in the silence of their own confusion. This isn't about becoming cold or heartless. It's about becoming steady. It's about mastery over yourself. Instead of being mastered by reaction, it is quiet strength, not desperate response. Spiritual discipline over mental noise. You aren't just setting boundaries. You are changing the terms entirely. Because those who manipulate don't care about your intentions. They only feed on your reactions. And when you stop giving them that, when you truly stop, you become unpredictable. And unpredictable people cannot be controlled. Manipulation often doesn't look like rage. It can arrive as tears, apologies, even guilt. Especially if you are compassionate, you may feel pulled to stay, not because of cruelty, but because of guilt. And guilt is the invisible chain. Psychologists call it trauma bonding. The Stoics would call it attachment to the wrong things. The cycle is predictable. They wound you, then soothe you just enough to keep you close. You question yourself for even wanting to leave. Then the cycle repeats. They don't break you with violence. They wear you down with confusion. They turn your empathy into a kind of debt you can never repay. But you are not cold for walking away. You are clear. A manipulator may cry, promise to change, or make you feel cruel for choosing peace. And if you are kind, your heart will want to believe, because good people long to believe in hope. But Stoicism reminds us, hope is not a strategy, and guilt is not a reason to stay. True discernment is not about rejecting compassion, it is about protecting it. Compassion without boundaries is self-betrayal. Seneca said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." Likewise, no one is more vulnerable to control than the one who refuses to draw boundaries, even when the truth is clear. Boundaries do not mean hatred. They mean alignment. They mean you have stopped trading your dignity for the illusion of connection. Forgiveness without standards becomes predictability, and predictability is exactly what manipulation thrives on. Stoicism doesn't kill compassion. It refines it. It directs it toward what builds your soul, not what empties it. This is not remorse. This is performance, and it deserves your clarity, not your sympathy. Self-worth is not arrogance, it is alignment. Walking away doesn't mean you are above them. It means you have finally stopped living beneath yourself. You don't need to yell. You don't need to convince. You don't even need to explain. You only need to choose yourself, fully and without hesitation. This is high performance of the soul, not about productivity, but about emotional efficiency. It is the discipline of removing what drains you, even if it once wore the mask of love. How to outsmart the guilt game. Here is a Stoic reminder. I am not responsible for someone else's growth, especially if it comes at the cost of my own. You can be kind and still walk away. You can forgive and still create distance. You can love and still say, "This ends here." Let them call you cold. Let them accuse you of abandoning them. Those who benefited from your silence will always be the loudest when you finally choose clarity. Compassion is not weakness. But compassion without clarity is self-abandonment. You don't need to harden yourself to protect your peace. You need only become clear and steady. If something costs your dignity or your self-worth, it is too expensive. Manipulators don't survive on love. They survive on energy, attention, confusion. That is their fuel. When you stop reacting, they lose it. When you stop explaining, they lose control. When you choose silence, not out of fear, but from discipline, you become unreadable. And unreadable people are untouchable. Why detachment is power. Detachment is often misunderstood. It is not apathy, not numbness, not coldness. It is the art of protecting your mind in a world that constantly seeks to capture it. Marcus Aurelius put it simply, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Strategic detachment means you observe without absorbing. You notice without reacting. You see the truth, but you do not sacrifice your peace to fix what is not yours to heal. Manipulators depend on emotional visibility. They study your reactions, your triggers, your patterns. But when you no longer hand them the script, when you stop over-explaining, defending, or correcting, you become a mystery. And what cannot be predicted cannot be controlled. Silence is not emptiness. It is focus. Silence is not weakness. It is strength. Concentrated. When you withhold reaction, you deny them the stage. You protect your clarity, and you force them to sit with the emptiness they cannot escape. They will call it the silent treatment, but this is not about punishment. It is about direction. You are no longer seeking connection where only control exists. How to detach like a strategist. Think of it as 3 levels. Mental detachment. Stop replaying the conversation. Stop rewriting what you should have said. The moment has passed. Let it go. Emotional detachment. Stop labeling them as good, bad, broken, or evil. Simply recognize they are unfit for my inner circle. Spiritual detachment. Release the idea that closure must come from them. Closure comes when you decide the story is finished. This is detachment, not escape. It is the calm refusal to lose yourself in battles that are not worthy of you. Understand this. Closure is not something you wait for from others. It is something you decide within yourself. And when mind, emotion, and spirit align, you enter stoic indifference, the highest form of strength. What happens when you no longer move to someone else's tune? When you stop reacting, they may escalate. They may guilt trip. They may provoke. They may disappear, hoping you chase. And when you don't, they return with apologies, promises, or carefully chosen words. This is the test. Don't mistake performance for change. Stay detached, not with anger, but with clarity. You are not ignoring them. You are protecting your mental space. Detachment is not withdrawal from life. It is discernment. You choose where your energy flows. You choose what deserves your presence. Silence becomes your language, not out of passivity, but out of strength. Because you have outgrown the need to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding you. Detachment does not mean you feel nothing. It means you no longer allow your emotions to be weaponized. True peace does not require performance. If it does, it isn't peace. It's control in disguise. Most people misunderstand detachment. They imagine it as coldness, numbness, or indifference. But the Stoic truth is this: detachment is not the absence of emotion. It is the presence of power. Emotional intelligence is not about denying feelings, but about directing them wisely, knowing which battles deserve your fire and which deserve only your silence. When you are tied to every insult, every provocation, every disappearing act, you become reactive, your strings pulled by another's hand. But when you practice detachment, you reclaim your place as the observer. You see without being consumed. You respond when it serves your character, and you remain silent when it protects your peace. This is what manipulators fear most: the person who will not play. Picture it. Someone tries to humiliate you in front of others. They expect an outburst, a defense, a wound they can exploit. But instead, you meet their words with composure. You neither lash out nor justify yourself. You remain calm, steady, and walk away with dignity intact. In that moment, you have not just avoided conflict, you have dissolved their power. Because those who rely on chaos do not know how to fight silence, and that silence, that self-command, that is not weakness. It is strength distilled. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Detachment is that truth in action: to see clearly, to choose wisely, to walk away in peace. This is the Stoic strategy. I feel the storm, but I don't step into it. I notice the manipulation, but I choose not to participate. This isn't avoidance, it's boundaries with clarity. You stop giving your energy to those who drain it. You stop seeking closure from people who profit from your confusion. You stop chasing validation from those who only diminish your worth. In that quiet refusal, you become untouchable. Detachment is not indifference, it is self-mastery. You still feel, but you don't act from impulse. You still care, but you don't chase what endangers your peace. You still love, but you no longer beg to be treated as if you matter. This is strength under pressure, the ability to move with clarity, not reactivity. The moment you shift from emotional turbulence to steady calm, you graduate. You step out of other people's games and return to your own path. Ask yourself, who gains power when I lose my composure? Who thrives on my explanations? Where am I giving away peace in the name of caring? And then decide, I will no longer react to disrespect. I will not engage with confusion. I will walk in clarity. I will no longer trade energy for attention. I will invest it in becoming unshakable. Because silence, when chosen with wisdom, is not weakness. It is strategy. Distance, when guided by purpose, is not coldness. It is sacred. Detachment, when practiced with clarity, is not fear. It is freedom. There comes a moment in healing when you realize not every battle needs to be fought. The true fortress is not hiding from life, but facing it without surrendering your peace. Those who manipulate, provoke, or diminish do not need permission to attempt it. They only need an opening. Most people give that opening daily through overthinking, through people-pleasing, through craving validation in the wrong places. But the Stoic does not wait for the world to soften. They prepare for its hardness and meet it with resilience. So what does this fortress look like? It begins with guarded thoughts. You don't let every opinion take root in your mind. You filter, you question, you ask, is this true? Is this useful? Does it deserve space in me? Because if your mind is open to every suggestion, you don't need an enemy with weapons. Words alone can undo you. Boundaries are not always loud. They don't require speeches or dramatic exits. The strongest boundaries are often silent, built through choices, not declarations. You choose not to engage with chaos. You choose not to argue with those determined to misunderstand. You choose not to respond to provocation. And when you stop dancing for approval, you stop being controlled by someone else's rhythm. A real example: someone toxic tries to re-enter. They send a vague apology, a guilt trip, a message laced with charm. This is where many break, thinking maybe they've changed, but you remain steady. You don't open the door because you've already secured the gate. You don't defend your peace. You embody it. You don't look backward for clarity. You live forward with certainty. You don't mistake drama for love, because your compassion now protects you as well. Epictetus said, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation." This is where your fortress begins, not in controlling others, but in choosing what you allow inside. You cannot stop lies or manipulation, but you can stop yourself from stepping into them. That is freedom. That is power. Every time you remain calm in the face of chaos, you build strength. Every time you choose stillness over reaction, you reclaim your power. Every time you guard your thoughts as sacred ground, you are no longer just surviving. You are leading your own peace. Remember, a distracted mind is vulnerable. A reactive mind is controlled. But a clear, composed, and steady mind, that is unshakable. That is why some will try to disturb your silence, test your patience, or provoke you into reaction. Yet the wall of your peace does not move, because it is no longer negotiable. It has been trained, tested, and secured. Not every return is a reunion. Sometimes it is a trap. Toxic people rarely leave for good. They pause, they regroup, and then return, not because they have changed, but because they believe you have not. If you do not recognize this pattern, you risk being pulled back into the very place you fought so hard to escape, drained, confused, and diminished. They rarely come back as they left. They soften their words. They mirror your language. They pretend to understand. But what they really understand is that you still care, and that is all they need. From there begins the performance. Guilt disguised as humility, regret disguised as love, silence turned into control. This is not redemption, it is strategy. Not healing, it is hunting. Why? Because your empathy is the target. The Stoics warned, pity can cloud reason. Empathy without boundaries becomes a liability. Manipulators do not seek the weak, they seek the compassionate who have not yet learned to guard their light. If you forgive too quickly, if you always see the best in others, if you blame yourself for what goes wrong, you become an easy mark. They do not want your love. They want your guilt, because guilt is easier to control than trust. So they paint themselves as the victim. They bring up the good times. They speak of abandonment. But they are not grieving you. They are grieving the loss of access to your energy. The Stoic way is simple. Respond with discipline, not reactivity. You do not need anger. You do not even need to respond. Sometimes the most powerful statement is not spoken. It is lived. To align so deeply with your truth that no explanation is required. This is inner strength in action. The Stoic does not open the door simply because someone knocks. They measure intentions, not words. They do not confuse sentiment with sincerity. And when they see the pattern, they remain unmoved, because their peace is no longer for negotiation. You've healed. You've moved on. You've built peace. And suddenly, they return. A heartfelt message, a long overdue apology, months or years of silence finally broken. Yet something feels off. That quiet unease is your emotional intelligence speaking. That sense of discomfort is clarity. Authentic redemption does not pressure you. It does not induce guilt. It does not demand a response. True accountability respects boundaries, even if closure is never granted. Some people leave the door open emotionally. They block the number but read messages. They move on physically but linger in thought, hoping for reconnection. This is where many relapse. Closing the door isn't enough. You must lock it with principle. Teach your nervous system. Absence is not abandonment. It is alignment. Teach your soul. Peace is sacred, not boring. Teach your ego. Not responding is not weakness. It is wisdom. The high-performance mindset requires discipline. Each return to a toxic cycle sacrifices momentum. Momentum is hard to regain. The Stoic approach says, I do not owe the past a new version of me. Your peace is not a playground for nostalgia, nor a revolving door for regret. Let them remain outside. Let them rewrite their own story. You are no longer in it. You have evolved. You have upgraded. Not all danger announces itself with anger. Some of the most manipulative people appear kind. The deadliest tactics are subtle, favors, flattery, strategic helpfulness. Seneca warned, nothing is more deceitful than the appearance of humility. Modern life is the same battlefield. The Stoic discerns between genuine kindness and calculated charm. Emotional predators mirror your values, speak your language, nod to your pain. But it is a pattern with strings attached. They listen to gather information. They support until you no longer serve their agenda. This is not love. It is strategy. The tactic works because it confuses your nervous system. Your mind senses red flags, yet their tone is calm. Your intuition signals caution, but their actions appear generous. This cognitive dissonance between what you feel and what they show is where manipulation thrives. You second-guess yourself, rationalize behavior, and overlook control because nothing seems overtly wrong. Remember this: anyone who uses kindness as leverage is more dangerous than someone who is openly cruel. Their strategy works precisely because you do not see it coming. A real-world example. Imagine someone who consistently helps, listens, and compliments you, but gradually expects access to your time, energy, and life. They subtly punish delays in response, remind you of their good deeds, and make refusal feel like cruelty. This is covert control, not through violence or volume, but through guilt disguised as care. The Stoic response: boundaries without emotion. Emotions are tools, not masters. When you detect this type of manipulation, you do not fight with anger. You respond with calm, clarity, and unwavering principle. Do not explain yourself with tears. Withdraw with clarity. Silence is not passive. It is a boundary. Distance is not cold. It is clarity in motion. You do not need to argue, prove, or win. You only need to recognize the tactic and refuse to engage. When someone tries to guilt you, ask yourself, if their kindness disappears the moment I stop pleasing them, was it ever kindness at all? High-value people protect their energy. They do not merely observe what others say. They notice what others expect, how they respond to a clear boundary, and whether respect is genuine. True generosity respects pace, honors limits, and celebrates boundaries. Manipulators, by contrast, rush intimacy, flatter excessively, or weaponize favors. Emotional intelligence is knowing when care is about control. Spiritual discipline is resisting the urge to explain your intuition to someone already pretending not to understand. The most subtle trap is the need to be seen as good. What keeps you in these dynamics is not love. It is fear of being perceived as rude, the craving for approval. The Stoic knows it is better to remain silent and misunderstood than vocal and manipulated. Your peace matters more than their approval. Your truth matters more than their feelings. Once you release the need to be seen as kind, you gain the strength to be truly kind to yourself. The ultimate strategy is not something you do to others. It is what you become. When faced with manipulators, narcissists, or covert abusers, your greatest power is inner order. When your mind, your values, and your reactions are aligned, no external chaos can sway you. Manipulators depend on emotional disruption. They need you reactive, impulsive, or uncertain. But when your mind responds with clarity, when your inner world is calm and principled, you become unreadable and unbreakable. As Marcus Aurelius said, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. When your inner world is grounded in principle, no outer disorder can dismantle you. Manipulators do not fear anger. They rely on it. They seek your outburst because it allows them control. But silent self-restraint, measured and unwavering, is far more powerful. It shows you understand the game, and you have chosen not to play. Emotional intelligence is more than a buzzword. It is strategy for life. It is knowing when to speak and when to let silence carry the weight. It is seeing beneath behavior instead of being swept away by words. And above all, it is mastering your inner world. No matter how loud the outer chaos becomes, you do not meet it with chaos. You meet it with clarity. You do not outsmart darkness by becoming darker. You rise above it, not to feel superior, but to protect your peace. Manipulators thrive in confusion. Your calmness dismantles their illusions. They provoke to cloud your vision, to stir second-guessing and spinning thoughts. But when you remain calm, focused, and grounded in self-mastery, their tactics find no purchase. That wall they cannot climb is not built of force. It is composed of non-reactive clarity, quiet discipline, and unwavering principle. The most formidable person to a manipulator is not the one who shouts, argues, or strikes back. It is the one who steps back with a composed mind, who walks away with inner peace already secured. A person has already won. Their boundaries are firm. Their silence is not absence, it is assertion. When you no longer seek validation from someone trying to manipulate you, they lose access to your mind. Your thoughts, attention, and energy are no longer available for their chaos. You have become unreadable. That is power. Your power was never in reaction. It was in stillness. The Stoics did not teach passivity. They taught strategy. They taught observation without enslavement, choice without emotional compulsion. When someone seeks to provoke you, they are seeking control. When you give them none, no outburst, no defense, no confusion, they are left with their own emptiness. The game ends, not because you fought, but because you walked away. This is a victory without bloodshed, without drama. Your peace matters more than their approval. Your truth matters more than their feelings. Your energy is too valuable to feed their chaos. Let them throw stones at your silence. Silence is not weakness. It is wisdom tempered by experience. When you live from spiritual clarity and emotional mastery, no one can manipulate you again. Not because they stop trying, but because they no longer know where to touch you. You have become untouchable, not with armor, but with inner light. The final truth: you do not need to fight manipulators with fire. You do not need to scream, explain, or play their game to prevail. You need only understand the game and quietly refuse to play. Detach from chaos. Respond with clarity, not emotion. Strategize with stillness, not noise. And in doing so, you reclaim your mind, your energy, and your peace. Not because you defeated them, but because you rose above them. That is the final move. It is not revenge. It is not confrontation. It is self-mastery. The ability to act with purpose without needing to prove yourself. The quiet strength that comes from knowing who you are and never seeking their approval again. If this message resonates, remember, you are not powerless. You are cultivating a refined form of strength, discipline, clarity, and inner order. Continue this journey with Stoic mindset mastery, where every lesson is a tool for the mind, guiding you to navigate life with calm and precision. Share this with someone who seeks to move through toxicity with composure, not chaos. Reflect, apply, and step back into your life with quiet authority. My silence is my power. I do not fight fire. I rise above it. This is more than a video. It is a lesson in high-performance mindset, psychological freedom, and inner peace. Peace that no manipulator can disturb. Stay composed, stay grounded, stay unstoppable.